In this installment of Washington Legal Foundation's Legal Brief, Richard Samp, Washington Legal Foundation's Chief Counsel, will discuss the Foundation's efforts to achieve access to experimental drugs for sufferers of Lou Gehrig's disease.
On Wednesday, August 12th, the Food and Drug Administration issued new regulations regarding compassionate access to experimental drugs. To hear FDA tell it, the new regulations demonstrate that FDA is firmly committed to providing such access to seriously ill people who lack other effective treatment options. Unfortunately, although FDA claims to be committed to helping seriously ill patients in this manner, its record demonstrates otherwise. The Washington Legal Foundation has been involved in this issue because it represents a group of patients suffering from ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. ALS is a life-threatening neurological disease for which there is no known cure. Some doctors have come to believe that Iplex, a drug approved by FDA as safe and effective for the treatment of short stature in children, may be effective in treating ALS. Unfortunately, although Iplex is available to ALS patients in Europe on a compassionate use basis, FDA announced last week that it will not allow access to Iplex to any more ALS patients in this country beyond the 12 patients currently receiving it. Among WLF's clients is Sheila Engdahl, an ALS patient living in Massachusetts. Even though Iplex is FDA approved for other uses, FDA in January denied a series of applications filed by ALS patients to get access to Iplex. These applications are known as treatment INDs. In February, WLF filed appeals on behalf of a number of those 12 applicants, and in early March, it convinced FDA to switch course and to grant access to those 12. At the same time, FDA announced on March 10th that it would not approve any INDs that it had not received by March 6th. That meant that Sheila Engdahl was out of luck. Although she mailed her IND to FDA on March 6th, it was not received by the agency until Monday, March 9th. FDA said that Engdahl could instead apply to participate in an anticipated clinical trial of Iplex among ALS sufferers. There was only one problem with FDA's scenario. There is no clinical trial planned for Iplex among ALS patients, and there is no prospect that one will start anytime soon. The result is that Sheila, whose anticipated lifespan as an ALS sufferer is quite short, will never be able to participate in a clinical trial. So WLF filed an administrative appeal from FDA's denial of the IND. We received the FDA's rejection of that appeal at the beginning of August. What makes this whole process so disturbing is that FDA does not have any legitimate reason for denying the appeal. It cannot legitimately challenge the safety of Iplex, given that it previously approved INDs for 12 other ALS patients. FDA's principal stated reason for denying the appeal is that granting Sheila access to Iplex might interfere with clinical trials that might be organized in the coming months. FDA noted that ALS patients might be unwilling to enroll in a clinical trial in which, after all, they have a 50% chance of being administered a placebo instead of Iplex, if they could be guaranteed access to Iplex through a compassionate use program. The trouble with that argument is that there is no reasonable prospect that there will be a clinical trial within the lifespans of current ALS patients. and patients such as Sheila often are excluded from clinical trials because their illnesses are too advanced. Several years ago, WLF filed a lawsuit against FDA by the name of Abigail Alliance v. Von Eschenbach, a constitutional challenge to FDA restrictions on access to drugs that are still under development. After an initial WLF victory in the appeals court, FDA ultimately prevailed by assuring the courts that its restrictions were actually quite minimal. It told the U.S. Supreme Court that, quote, virtually all requests for compassionate use access to drugs are granted. WLF's experience with ALS patients suggests that FDA has not lived up to that pledge. Accordingly, WLF is contemplating a return to federal court to continue to press the claims of terminally ill patients being denied access to drugs that are their only hope for survival.